We're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you all for being here. We are so excited about this event today, and just so thrilled to have our special guests here. My name is Natasha Holloway, and I run the Employee Engagement Program for NSWC Dahlgren with my colleague here, Nicole Lenga. And just real quick about the EAP. As you'll hear us call it the EAP, it's less of a mouthful than Employee Engagement Program. The EAP is kind of a compilation of programs at Dahlgren. It's our conflict resolution program, our professional coaching program, and then we also have the veteran integration program, which is what brings us here today. And one of the goals of the veteran integration program is to establish kind of a formal mentoring program for veterans. It kind of started with the concept of veterans who had been around Dahlgren Division for a while, kind of more seasoned, to be able to mentor veterans who are kind of newer to the command, who might be going through the transition from military to civilian, and then also just kind of general career development as well. So if there's anybody in here who's a veteran and who is not part of veteran integration and is interested, we do have sign-up sheets in the back. So please get involved. We'd love to have you. And then in addition to the mentoring, the program also aims to just kind of connect the veteran community, offer some networking and growth opportunities. We try to do presentations and things like today's event. So, speaking of today's event, I want to introduce you to our very special guests. In your seats, you might be sitting on copies of their bios and a history of the WAVES, which is the Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service. And so, so you've got some information about our guests here today, but on the stage here, we have Miss Roberta Lockard, who goes by Bobby. You want to wave, Roberta?
In the middle.
And Miss Bobby.
I can barely see.
Yeah, we're encouraging people to kind of come to the front for that purpose. But Bobby was a WAVE in the 50s, and on her right is her daughter, Shannon Williamson, who is here to lovingly support her mother and her grandson, Lance Williamson, who is also a member of Veteran Integration and E37. E37, and has been wonderful helping us to get this event together. And last but not least, Miss Jeannie Coakley, who is kind of a beloved friend of Bobby's and of the family, and was in the Navy in the 80s and 90s, and was actually stationed here at Dahlgren. So she's got some interesting stories about that as well. And so, anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. I know everybody's a little nervous, but it's a very supportive community. Thank you again for being here. And at this time, I'd like to welcome our commanding officer, Captain Orvik, to come up and say a few words, if you would, sir.
So thank you, first of all, for the invite. Thanks for coming out this afternoon. I don't give the applause. I think we're all need to applause. I was looking over the bios of both of these awesome people. So, and I was trying to think, what do I say to follow up on which I will only take away from what they've done. But before I talk about that, let me talk about the veterans integration. So I was excited to hear we had it, and I was talking to Natasha last week about it, and I think it's a great program, and I encourage everybody to go spread the word. I'm going to try to do that. I signed up with an email. I'm going to try to go. I think it's great. I think it's a great plan. I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that we want to support. Right? Because I think male, female, whatever your background, enlisted, I don't think it matters. I think that at the end of the day, whether you really are consciously aware of it or not, especially when you're younger in the service, right, just starting out, you feel 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and you can go do whatever. You don't really think about the mushy stuff. But I really do. Over my time, I think I've seen, like I said, even subconscious recognition of service to something other than yourself, right? There's something about serving a higher purpose that is inherent, I think, in people, right? And whether that higher purpose is just the people next to you in Berlin, right, on the ship, or in your platoon, or maybe in the Navy, or maybe to the nation and patriotism and all that great stuff. I don't know what it is. I think it's different for everybody, but I think there's something to that service aspect that attracts people and keeps people. And so I think even once you are out of the service and you're doing other awesome things, I think that's why so many veterans tend to gravitate back to something related to the service, right? So I think there's some goodness there, and I think we should encourage that. I'm certainly going to try. I encourage all of you to do that. I think it's great. And the other thing that struck me when I was thinking about the saying here, to some people, a lot of this, like the wave, seems like ancient history. I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's the truth, right? If I talk to my son about the waves and the wax and all that stuff, he's like, that's a long time ago. But it's not that long. My first ship was integrated, had female crewmen on a destroyer. My second ship did not. It was still an all-male crew. So that's not that long ago. And I think it's, that resonates, right? So things are improving, things we're making great strides, right? All that stuff is true. It's not that long ago. And then I read about, and I'm not the person to, went into service in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's awesome, right? So I won't touch on that, but it wasn't that long ago. So I thought that was interesting. Funny story, my dad came to visit me on my first ship in Norfolk. He enlisted in the Navy in 1948. So he was in the Navy for the Korean War. And he refused to believe me that there were women serving on the ship. He did not believe me. I think he thought I was deluded. Or dumb, or both. He did not believe me until we went up the quarterdeck, and the petty officer of the watch was ET2, who was staying on the watch. Looked at her and welcomed her on board and turned around. Wow. I was like, wow. You weren't kidding. No, I wasn't kidding. And that ET2, by the way, is probably the best sailor on the ship. She was fantastic. Anyway, so I think there's some commonality in service. I think I will close with just saying there's also, I think there are somebody has to be first. And so I give you all the credit in the world for being the pioneering people that try to do something first. Because I think it's hardest to be first. And I think that you get all the credit in the world for that. Because that ET2, who was probably the best sailor on the ship, and also on that same destroyer, we had QMC, Quartermaster Chief, and she had been waiting. She'd been in the Navy, but she'd been waiting for 20 years to get on the ship and actually begin navigating on the ship. And she finally got that chance, and you could see she retired off the ship. And I'll never, that was my first real retirement ceremony that I witnessed for somebody coming on that duty. And as the kids say today, you get the feels, right? We're all standing there watching, you could just see the emotion pouring out of her. She got the chance to serve afloat, right? That's cool, right? If you're a navigator, and you're not on the ship, you're not really navigating. So just to see the reward from her was awesome. So I leave that thought. I just want to say thank you for coming and taking your time to talk this afternoon. I'll put it in another pitch. Please join the veterans group. Unfortunately, I can't stay this afternoon. I have to go back for CO things I could not get out of. So you have to forgive me for not sticking to the whole thing. But please let me know how I can help. Let me know the next time we meet. Let me know how I can support this stuff. It's just awesome. Thank you for coming and looking out here afternoon, hearing these awesome stories. So, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I cannot believe that about your second ship. No. That is amazing to me. It's my life. But thank you.
It was, to be fair, it was small.
Still.
Hard to
Still. That is still pretty shocking. Wow. So at this point, I want to invite Lance Williamson and Nicole to come up and just talk a little bit quickly about kind of how this event came about, and then we give some info about these amazing people on the stage, and his military experience as well, and whatever else you want to say. So come on up.
All right, we're going to try and get this, both of us can hear. If you guys can't hear one of us, let me know. So thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Captain. Like Natasha said, we are just so honored and humbled to be here today. I'm just so excited this is coming to fruition. My name is Nicole Langa, like she said, and I'm just truly honored to be here with our guest speakers and for each of you taking time out of your busy schedules. You know, everyone's a lot going on, so to take your afternoon and spend an hour and a half with us or whatever you can do here today, we're just very grateful. So, to give a little background about how this event came about, it was kind of a fun story. So it kind of started with a deep curiosity. So at our last event for veteran integration, it was transitioning from military to civilian culture. And we had a networking like scavenger hunt where one of the questions was, find a person who had a family member who has served in the military, which kind of expanded us thinking, does anybody have a grandmother that served in the military? Because you never know, like who in your family has served. And so we were interested in hearing women's voices and stories among the rest of the group and what the stories were. And while nobody in the room did, we had a VI member reach out on Microsoft Teams, one of the platforms that we have for meetings thanks to COVID, afterwards. And so began this exciting journey. So Lance is here with me. So Lance, when you heard me ask about anybody having a grandmother that had served in the military, what went through your mind?
Pure excitement, honestly, just because nobody seemed to speak up. And unfortunately, I was dialed in a bit late to this meeting, and so I was behind on the actual conversation and chat and everything that was going on. So I had to jump in after the fact and just kind of send a message like, hey, I heard this while I was catching up on the meeting. Like, I just wanted to let you know that I do have a grandmother in case you want the information or are interested in meeting her or whatever can come about this.
And of course, we said, yes, please tell us more. There's just a lot of unknown, and I think part of what drew us to this topic is there's so much that's, people are needing the connection, this feeling of belonging, you know, whether it's COVID or other things that have happened over the years, the connection is more important now than ever. So hearing a story from somebody who served in the 50s, and then we're going to hear these lovely stories across the decades, is truly wonderful. So what does it feel like to know your grandmother who served in the military?
Honestly, very proud of her. Hearing, I'm not going to try to go into any of the stories because she's going to go into them, but just hearing the stories when people are shocked and surprised that she served in the military at her age, because it was so uncommon for that to be a thing. I mean, if you look at the yearbook, there's all these women that signed up and went to boot camp and served as ways. But in the grand scheme of things, they were a very small percentage and were kind of overlooked in history as part of this great machine that is the U.S. Navy.
Absolutely, and you referred to the yearbook. There are a couple of copies going around, so we're very blessed to have, I think Lance painstakingly took photos of each page of this 1957 Navy yearbook from Bobby's boot camp. So there's another one at the table. I think there's a couple of the rows here, so please do take a peek. It's really interesting. So I'd like to now have Lance just kind of give us a little bit of his background and share here a little bit about what made him join the military and kind of a little bit more about him.
Sure thing. Again, thank you everybody for coming. Not for me, but for these two amazing women up here and everything that they're going to share with us. I feel like this is something that we don't do often enough, unless you're part of the VFW or but unless you're part of one of those organizations, you don't take the time to reach out and touch these people that live through these times in history and get their perspectives on these things that we see in movies, we see in documentaries, or we read in books, or get taught in school. They lived through these times and actually have different perspectives than we'll ever be able to understand. So they're like living time capsules, and we just need to reach across the aisle and just talk to them, find them, and hear their stories. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lance Morrison. I was born here in Virginia. I come from a family with a lot of military service. I've got grandfather served in the Army. I don't know what that is. But he raised 2 Marines, so he did something right.
He is in the front row, he's pointing to.
Yes, I know, I'm a Marine on the Navy base, heard all the jokes, and red crayons are my favorite. I also had a grandfather who served in the Navy, and then later went on to serve in the Pentagon before he passed. And my other grandfather was a Marine who was married to this beautiful lady right here, and he was a Marine's Marine. He, first off, honestly, he was in the Army at 15, and out in Europe before his family sent out a Red Cross message to notify them of his age and hold him to service. So he turned 18, he joined the Marine Corps, and he went to Korea. And if anybody knows military history, they might recognize Chosin Reservoir. If you don't know that battle, I implore you, please go look it up. It is amazing what these men went through, being cut off from supplies and just the sheer grit that it took them to fight out there. So he served in Chosin Reservoir, where he got his first Purple Heart, and then he did 2 tours of Vietnam, where he got his second Purple Heart. All the while he had her support him through his entire career before he eventually retired as a technically a master sergeant, though he didn't hold it long enough to even have his son who was dressed in blues before he retired. And then I had an older brother who served in the Marine Corps in OIF during the pushback. So just a lot of influence in my life, draw to serve before I enlisted in 2004 and did 2 tours in Iraq myself, and then served my second enlistment at TISA, supporting the warfighter in communications testing, which was my entire career has been supporting the warfighter. I'm actually on the front lines. I was a ground electronics mechanic. So that made my transition here to Dalton after I got out in 2013 fairly easy. Just same mission, support the warfighter, do what you can to keep them alive. But that's enough about me. And this is not about me at all. I just want you guys to know who I was. This is about that. This is about Roberta Locker, who joined the Navy in 1957, and Miss Jeannie Coakley, who joined in 1984. And there are wonderful stories that they have, and their time of service, and the sacrifices that they gave for this country. And so let's crack open the time capsule and hear what they have to say. So without further ado.
So thank you for listening. All right, so yeah, without further ado, like you said, we're gonna go ahead and just make our way up to the stage and try not to fall on our face while doing so. All right. Maybe turn this off there.
Did that without falling. I know. So we did want to, before we jump in, so we are hoping that there'll be questions from the audience, and we're going to hold them until the end, but we really encourage your questions. And so Danica will walk around with the mic just to make sure that everyone can hear. One other thing, we were thinking, we're up here talking, telling everybody about you and hearing about you, and probably you're a little bit curious about the audience and who you're talking to. So we wanted to ask if, kind of the spirit of connection that Nicole talked about earlier, if anybody who is a veteran, anybody who's current active duty, could please stand and recognize you. Thank you. And then this will single you out when we were going to ask the gentleman to sit. Thank you for your service as well.
And the reserve duty as well, right? Yeah. Yeah, I called you out, Janet. Wow.
Okay, so, all right, so we've got some questions here, but this is meant to be kind of a comfortable conversation, and so again, as you're thinking of your questions, keep those for those wonderful ladies. And so, first, we've kind of we've heard in talking with you and prepping for this event and talking with Lance, about your kind of rich military history in your families. And we are curious if you were both the first women to serve in your families, and if so, kind of what drove you to vote to join the Navy?
I'll let you go first. I'm having a hard time hearing. Sorry.
That's the first question.
Why we came in, why we entered the Navy. Oh. Okay, that's easy.
Can you all hear her?
I was living with my mother in Branson, Missouri, and okay. See, this is what happens to people. Now, what was I saying? Oh, okay. And my minister and his wife both were in the Navy in World War II. So I just started talking to the minister a lot, his wife, a lot, and decided, well, I think I can do that too. As simple as that, and I did. And here we are. I really have to say that this is my daughter Shannon. She is a retired deputy sheriff, which means be careful. And that is my son-in-law right there. He is a retired deputy sheriff, and I live with these guys. So you gotta forgive me for a lot. And Tyler is a police officer in Gordonsville, and if you need an ambulance, he knows how to drive it. If you need to be brought out of a heart attack, he knows how to get your heart hurt again. So that's Tyler. And Don. And Don is the cook for that bus. He's our cook. That was my deal.
Because I know Bobby from our church, and that's how I got invited to attend it, because Lance was looking for women for the program. Of course, Bobby suggested myself, so I am very honored to be here. I guess in your little handout there, you can see my biography, and I thought, well, why did they want to talk to me? I mean, what did I do? But I don't remember because my dad was in World War II, many of his brothers, my brother was in Vietnam, and I do remember that when he left and when he came home. Other family members had served, so I had gone to college, lived in New York, and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I had gone into teaching, I was going to be a teacher, and I got to the summer before my senior year and realized that I did not have the heart that you need to be a teacher and dedication. So I was just going to drop out, and I was like, no. So talked with my counselor and had been involved in music, declared a music major, and I thought about going into music therapy because I love working with people, around people, and so I had gone home, was working, I had a student loan that I needed to pay back, so I was doing that, and after about almost a year went by, not quite, and I thought, well, there has to be more to life than this. And there just happened to be a recruiting office across the street, and I was thinking about it, and the fact that many of my family had served, and as a way to travel and get out, but also to the heart of the love for my country and the freedoms and all of that played a part in it, really did. And I went across the street and talked with a recruiter, And the next day, or no, the next week, he had me in, it's called Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn, where they have the counselors and take the ASVAB. Is that even a thing anymore? So, 4 years of college, I had done very well on that, and they were looking into computer. They offered me a lot of computer, and at that point, of course, this was the early 80s, there really wasn't computer like it is now. I mean, kids have laptops in school, whatever. My daughter has a laptop and pads and everything. So the technology, I did not have that at that time, and that was something that I was not interested in. I said I wanted to work with people, and was looking more to like a corner. And they said, well, we don't have anything in hospital corner, but you could go into dental. I'm like, I hate that. So I'm not going to dental. So he said, oh, but then you can cross-train into corner. And I'm like, oh, okay. He said, well, if you do this, you have to leave tomorrow. Like, so first I called my mom and my dad, and then I said, okay. I called my boss and said, I'm not going to be in tomorrow. And I was on the plane the next day to boot camp. So, but even the details couldn't believe it. He was like, can I use your story and share it with people? I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. But it was the desire to go out and travel and see the world, but also to a part of being that in my family history as well. And the open book.
Miss Bobby, I think you were the first female as well, so we've got the only woman in this family, right, that had served? To serve in the military?
Yeah.
So some firsts here.
As a first, my mother didn't want me to go, and she signed for me.
Wow.
My father, they were divorced, but my father came to see me and tried to talk me out of it. I said, I'm leaving. I got on a train. I was 18. I was a little dumb, I think, but everything seemed to fall into place. And I'm grateful for that, because really I didn't know what I was doing. I did well in school. I just really didn't know what I was going to do. And there was the talk with the minister's wife, and the recruiter that I talked to was very kind. I was sent on a train to St. Louis to get the physical. And the doctor okayed me. I was way overweight. He okayed me. And I believe in guardian angels. Who's a guardian angel, I think? And he said, I'm sending you to boot camp. You'll lose weight anyway. It's been the story of my life. So he okayed me, and that's how I got in. Yeah. And I got to Bainbridge later, Baptist family and Bainbridge, and walked in, and I was home. That was my reaction. I am at home. And I walked, and I was just so, my goodness, we can have showers, we've got running water. I lived on a farm, and then, there's no running water. And food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you better eat fast, I found out. Because you're going to be dumping it at the end of the line. So anyway, I was at home. I was comfortable. And, you write your family, had to write letters to your family every week. Every Sunday you had to sit down and write letters to your family. And my mother never really accepted that I was in the Navy, and my grandmother did. So
When
when we met with them originally, Bobby was telling us about how much she absolutely loved boot camp and just what an incredibly wonderful experience it was. I think we were all just like, I've never heard of this. I've never said these things before, but it makes so much sense. It's such a new world.
I was gonna say, I love the uniform. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. I love that uniform so much, and, the comeuppance on that is, in the 50s, that was not looked on as anything good for a woman to do. It really wasn't. People, and you know, the people would, if you passed a stranger, they'd sometimes just look there, just make a face, or say something ugly. And so there was that, but I really didn't care. I love that uniform. And up there. I did not love that uniform. That is like a seersucker dress that we had to starch and iron in the summertime. That was bad uniform. The other one's great. I don't have any of them left.
Most of these are pictures from your yearbook or that you, Jeannie, have given us. So in the upper left-hand corner, that's Bobby, and on the right is Jeannie, and then there's some pictures of them, of Bobby's experiences. And then I think the one in the top left, that's the Dahlgren. That's actually from, that's a Dahlgren picture. And when we were getting ready for this event, we noticed that there's an entire exhibit out there about waves and women at Dahlgren. So if you get a chance to go out and check that out, it's really cool. So that's actually a Dahlgren picture up there. And then Jeannie was able to find her uniform and brought it.
I didn't say my uniform.
So it's up there on the easel.
And I too was proud to wear it.
But we were moving all the time, so that's my excuse. Now, I married a Marine, his grandfather. I married a Marine. I would advise you, if you're gonna marry a Marine, talk to me first. My Marine was, he had been in Korea. He was in the, chosen reservoir. He was one of the chosen few, and suffered a lot from that. And then when we were married, he went to Vietnam. So, and he was really a good man, and he loved these guys.
All right. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm just enamored by your stories already, and we're just getting started. So thank you. It's just such a special thing. So, as we were kind of learning more about women's history in the military and this term waves, you know, we're by no means experts, but we did want to give a little bit of research and information in case there are folks that aren't as familiar with the waves like we weren't. It's been a learning experience. So I'm just going to read a little bit about what we learned about the waves. During World War II, the United States Navy created a branch of the Naval Reserve to enlist women, known as WAVES, like Natasha said in her intro. So it's an acronym for Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service. Approximately 100,000 women served in the WAVES over the course of the year. The next part is really interesting. So most were discharged in 1946, but then in 1948, Congress passed the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, which gave women a permanent place in the regular Navy and the Naval Reserve. So although the Women's Reserve itself ceased to exist, the acronym WAVES continued to be used in the subsequent 25 years. Now I find this part especially interesting because as you talk to different people that have served, WAVES seems to still be used. So they say 25 years, but depending on who you speak to, somebody might have said, oh, I was a WAVE too. So we had a conversation with Miss Jeannie about if she considered herself a WAVE, and I'd love you to tell that story in just a second. if she was, and she said no. But we also had a person that had come to us before this event, and she had said, so she was a female veteran, she was in our veteran integration group, and she served in the 80s, and again in the 90s and 2000s, and she served as both a wave and a women in the Navy. So even though she served in a similar time period, she did consider herself a wave. But I'd like to ask this question, right? So, but according to what you learned when you came in, what did that look like for you from the wave perspective?
Yeah, we had, of course, you learned naval history about the wedding, but the first chief that was at my first duty station had done a wedding, and but she came in the 60s, and so that she didn't consider herself a wave at that point, but she said she had been a wave.
Yeah, so even that term still has a little bit of differences. So back to Bobby, what did it feel like to be a wave at that time?
To be a wave. I was just proud. I was stationed at, I went to radio school at NTC San Diego, and when Bob and I, my husband and I got married, and we had an apartment downtown San Diego. And we would actually come across on a ferry and we'd walk like 13 blocks to our apartment. And sometimes I really disliked some of the way people looked at us. And like they really just didn't approve at all of a uniform. So he was in uniform, I was in uniform. So, and it's just, it's just where things go. You just sometimes have to ignore things. So they'd shout something at me. Especially if I was walking alone, they would shout something at me. So perfect strangers just say negative things. And I wish I'm forgetting a lot of things. Honestly, I forget from here to here. And I'm 86, by the way. So I do forget a lot. But I've kind of never forgotten how some people treated us just because we're wearing a uniform. And especially him. He had been in Korea. And that was a horrifying experience for him. So, but he never said a word about it. He just went on home.
When we were prepping for this, Bobby was saying, that she's 86 and doesn't really remember a lot of details, and then she started telling us about, people by their first, middle, and last name that she was with in 1957, and they did this job, and this person told her this, and I think Shannon, we kept looking at Shannon and Lance, and they were just like, just amazed. I mean, I know you say you can remember things, but the detail was just incredible. It's really been rich. So one of the things that I'm curious about is kind of in line with the theme here today. You both served in very different times, different eras, and I'm sure you've chatted a lot, obviously, about your experiences. I'm curious about what experiences were similar for both of you, and what things maybe had changed or were different when Bobby was in service, when you were in service.
More or less, yeah. So talking about the decades, things that were similar, things that were different.
Okay. Even when I served, and this was of course in the early 80s, women were not allowed on a lot of the ships. No air guys that came into the clinic. But I even had, when I first went in to the recruiting office, I knew that I would not go Army or Marine Corps for obvious reasons, but I don't think do Air Force or Navy. And I knew I would have to do boot camp, but from speaking with family members and things, the boot camps are not as intensive as Marine Corps or Army. So, okay, I'll do, went to the Air Force recruiter first. And we talked a little bit, and he's like, well, I don't really like to work with women on delayed entry because, oh, they decide they're gonna get married, and then they don't wanna come in, or they get pregnant, or, yeah, and I'm just like, really? And I was like, okay, so, and then that's how I ended up in the Navy versus the Air Force, because of that attitude. I couldn't believe it, and anyway, so the Navy recruiter, he was wonderful, like you were talking about yours, he just was wonderful. Anyway, and then when I was in school, of course, all women had to go to Orlando for boot camp at that time. There was no boot camps were on the West Coast, San Diego, Great Lakes, and Orlando. So all the women went to Orlando. And so when everybody got together for their classes, the school out in San Diego, the guys were like, well, you didn't do this. Like, yeah, we did. Well, you didn't do that. Yeah, we did boot camp. Different physical programs and things. I'm like, yeah, we did everything they did other than they did the regular push-ups, and at that time the women could bend their knees and do their push-ups. But other than that, we went through the exact same boot camp as men, and of course the guys, they wouldn't believe that. And then when we were getting ready to be stationed, 2 weeks before we graduate, the class gets their orders. And we were able to swap orders within the class. They just wanted more body out of the next class, so we were able to switch orders. But there were some places that we could not go. So I would try to talk someone into letting me have their orders, and it was like, oh no, women can't go there. So at that point, we were still very limited. Like I said, there was one guy, I want to say it was Theodore Roosevelt was getting commissioned, if I remember correctly, and there was a guy that was really, oh, I don't know, I said, listen, if I could change orders with you right now, I would. That's going to go all around the world to show it off. But because I was female, I could not go on that ship. And things have vastly improved and gotten better, and I'm glad to see that. But that females can't do what males do was still very prevalent when I was in.
We even were limited to how much we could lift, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, just how much you can lift. You know, and it was like kind of embarrassing, you know. We would pick up a bunch of books or something. That's over the weight limit. Put them down. I'll carry them for you.
Oh my gosh.
Truly, yeah. That was just ridiculous. There was a lot of ridiculous stuff. But you had to just kind of do this and say, that's done. Now go pay attention to that. You learn real fast what to pay attention to, which are the instructors. Or, well, I'd like to say a little jerky little sailor, but some of them were really, those two beside me in that picture up there. Yeah, those two young men.
So the
Just kind of took.
middle picture, the group picture in the middle at the top.
The other one by me is Pat Nims, who's from Missouri, and of course I lost touch with her a long time ago. But those guys were always kind of watching out for us, those two guys. So, you know, and so I really appreciated that, because some of them could just be ugly and mean. But that didn't happen too often. I had a thumbtack stuffed in my hand by somebody who said, put his hand out to here, and I didn't know who it was. And when I say I was dumb, the other guys in my class who were standing around, went and had words with me. So there was that. But, you know, you just never knew what to expect, and, but I still love the uniform. Yeah. But you know what, I don't have not one piece left for it. I swore I saved the little pin that I had, and I wish I had it back.
I wish we could help you find it.
Long ago.
See, your memory, it's brilliant. You just gave your colleague's name up there right next to you, and that was from, and the state. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I remember strange things.
Don't we all? But we're not all 86. So as we've mentioned, we do have a couple of Roberta's 1957 yearbooks floating around. And I wanted to point that out again because as we were looking through it, there were several things that like popped out, very surprising to us. And I know Lance could talk probably at an extent to some of the things we were finding in there. It's truly a treasure though, so if you haven't seen it yet, please just take a couple of minutes and look at it because it truly is a treasure trove. But according to her yearbook, there were approximately 25 ratings available to women. So for those that didn't come from the military background, ratings are kind of what we would call a job or a career within the military. So from her yearbook, it said 25, and then also in the text itself, it said 27, so there was a little bit of ambiguity there. And then if you look up history of the waves, which might be just because there are waves at multiple locations, it says there were up to 38 ratings available to women. So even that kind of surprised us with the number of jobs, ratings that women could do at the time. This ambiguity to me is noteworthy and interesting. So I wanted to ask, I guess Miss Bobby first, because I know you were a radio man, and that's kind of the start of our title, making waves and radio waves. You get it? It's fun stuff, right? We're very, very creative here. But what ratings were you interested in when you joined the Navy, and how did that shape your journey in the military? Like when you became a radio man, how did that come to be?
Oh, I was offered pharmacist mate, I was offered Corway. I was offered pharmacist mate, Corway, what was the other one? I can't think. I was offered 3. I took radio school because I had this feeling, I just wanted to learn Morse code. I thought that would be really cool. Now that's young and ignorant.
Or brilliant.
If I had been a dental tech, I would have had another job when I got out. But I was a radio man, and which was, it was a wonderful class. I mean, an instructor was wonderful. He would let nobody bother me at all, or my friend. I've lost track.
That's okay. Well, there is a picture in her bio of a radioman. So if you look at her page, it's not a picture of Bobby, but there is a picture on her bio that we took from the yearbook of what it looked like to be a radioman. So just a fun fact there. I don't think we have it on the screen.
I was sent to North Island, which is right there. I think Tom Cruise was there too. See, that's what I'm worried about, Tom Cruise. Anyway, I was sent to North Island, and the guys in there, they were all men that worked there. They were great, they were wonderful. The only thing they wouldn't let me do is put milk and sugar in my coffee. So I was a big vat of coffee like that, and I was drinking black coffee all the time. And anyway, and they were very helpful, and if I had a question, they answered it. They were just really wonderful. with the exception of one who was a first class, and, he borrowed $20 from me one time. And the next month, he kept borrowing $20 from me, but he would give it back. He borrowed $20, and then he would give it back like 3 months later, I don't know. Anyway, but he kept doing that. That's the only thing that I remember that was kind of negative, but he was a nice guy. And I guess he didn't have enough money, I don't know. And we only did one actual patrol where we had to be active on the radio and keep people out of trouble or get people out of here. We helped do that one time, and it was at night, and it was like kind of, kind of something I remember is kind of exciting, but kind of like, get me out of here. So, anyway, I tried.
I think I talked a little bit about that before, about going into the dental school, why I chose dental, like that really kind of was a way to get into the equipment. And of course now, we talked a little bit about changes. The dental technician rating is no longer what it is you come in as a foreman, and then the dental school is a specialty school. Like foremen come in and then they can train to be a radiologist, pharmacist, whatever, but that's what the dental tech rating on the sleeve there, that is no more. But I even when I got to the school out in San Diego, first day I checked in, I asked the lady, I said, well, if someone's really not happy with, their choice of school, can you drop out? And she said, oh yeah. And of course, the dental school was on what they call the dry side. You had the interstate that kind of split the base, and then the school was on one side and the fleet was on the other. And she said, you can drop school, but you will be on one of those ships tomorrow. So, I mean, I knew that eventually I would get to go on a ship because that's why I was in the Navy, but I really didn't want to go in that quick. So, so I decided to stick it out, and I did very well. I was very happy with the class and the people that were in it, and it wasn't very competitive, but because I was a little older, the facilitator, she would come to me if somebody was kind of falling behind. Oh, you think you can help him? Of course, that was my nature, was to be helping, so I did that a lot, but that kind of was to my advantage later on. They had an unplanned loss, and our class was the next one in line to graduate, and the detailer from Washington said, we need a warm body out of your next class. And some of the facilitators got together and they recommended me, and the master chief called me and said, well, was I happy with my orders? I was going to be going to Dam Lake, Virginia. And I said, well, yes, Master Chief, but if you need me someplace else, I will go. He said, well, how would you like to go to London? I mean, that was my first choice on the duty preference sheet. I had put London, Hawaii, and Bermuda. And so, like I said, that helping people and doing for others, that really worked for my advantage, because then I was able to go over there for 3 years. So, I didn't really want that rating to start with, but I was very glad for the opportunities that it opened for me.
Yeah, I think Damnick, London. Probably not words, but yeah, cool.
I'm gonna make things happen for you.
So I do want to take a few minutes to invite audience questions, but I think we have all these questions that we knew we wouldn't be able to get through all of them. But one of the things we really wanted to ask Bobby was what you would say to young women who are joining the service now. Like, what words of wisdom?
What words of wisdom would you share with women joining the military?
Oh, coming to the military now. Women now have so many more advantages But if you're going into the military, and I do see this, and I saw it even when I was in boot camp, we had people who came into the military, oh, I'm gonna go to school, or, you know, I wanna travel, I did too. But ultimately, the reason you are there is to, you've made your oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, and that is your primary job. And so when the reality of it kind of set in, many people weren't happy. But that is your first priority, is that you are to defend your country. And then after that, the benefits, the opportunities for women now are just so much more than we women. And the acceptance of women in many roles that they didn't have back then, or opportunities to go on the carriers and submarines and pilots and things that just weren't heard of even when I was in the early 80s. So, and take advantage of every opportunity you get. That's what I would say.
And I'd like to jump in here. I'm thinking about all of the women who are now flying jets. They, I was, my son Lloyd was in the Navy, and he was at Pax River, Patuxent. And he took me out to the ocean, the sand, for the Blue Angels demonstration. And I was like, oh my God. You know, when you see that, it's like, and then years later, I'm watching television, and there is a flyby by the Blue Angels with 4 planes, and they do the missing woman thing. Definitely, they do missing men, and that one, you remember saying that the one jet goes straight up, and they did a missing woman, because the woman they were doing it for was the first woman to fly Navy planes, the first one. And I thought, didn't think I'd ever see anything like that. I didn't, and I was just so like, just bowled over, because there they were. Yeah. And it was just a super feeling. And that's women today. They can do, I guess, pretty much everything. Amen. Yeah, think about that.
Absolutely. I do want to ask you one more question, because Lance was telling us about this particular story when we first started this idea, and I just think it's really special. Roberta, we understand you had a unique experience when you visited the shores of Normandy on vacation a few years ago, when you went to Normandy. And maybe Lance could help too if you need it, but would you tell us a little bit about what happened when your tour guide asked about if anyone had served?
When you went to Normandy, and they asked about people that had served in the military.
Yeah, well, my son Rob, who was also in the Navy, Rob's the one, I gotta say this, Rob's the one that was based on a carrier, and they had a swim call, and he jumped from the flight deck into the ocean. And he said it was, and called me and told me about it. He was all across the country. country I don't know where he was somewhere. He called me long distance. Tell me he jumped off the carrier and he said, I almost felt like I was just gonna die because the water was so hard, and I said, oh my God, Rob. That was Rob. Anyway, but he did his time in the Navy. I don't know where we were.
Normandy, when you went to Normandy?
Oh, Norman. Rob and his wife Candy, my daughter-in-law, we went to Normandy. And we did the Vikings tour, the Viking boat ship tour from, okay.
Paris to Normandy. From what was called Paris to Normandy.
It was Paris to Normandy, that was what it was, Paris to Normandy. And of course, we were sitting there, they did the taps, which just makes everybody cry, especially me. And then they asked all the veterans to come forward, and all these men, going up with like 30 to 40 men, was a whole lot. And Rob takes a hold of me and pushes me, and I said, I'm not going up there. He said, yes, you are. So he was Navy, and he gets in there, and everybody's saying what they were, and he says, Navy, comes down to me, Navy. I was the only woman. That's the thing, and that shocked me, that I was the only woman.
And they assumed that she was up there because, you know, her husband or something was in the military. They had a hard time believing that she had actually served. And of course, they had tons of questions for you afterward. It's pretty cool.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I feel like we could just sit here all day, but my boss is in the audience. What an improvement. So we do want to give folks time to ask questions too. Bianca, do you want to hand the mic around? Anybody wants to?
This is for family too.
You guys have questions for your grandma and friend? Or anything you want to elaborate on?
Just for Nana, did you ever get in trouble or possibly crash somebody's car?
Yes, I got in trouble and crashed somebody's car. Oh my goodness. Okay, well that story is, I had met this wonderful Marine. Best memory ever. And say that again.
Driving license to cut.
Crash the car.
Crash car. Okay, so you see, I'm 86. I know, that's what I'm, 86, that's my excuse. My Bobby J, he asked me if I knew how to drive. I said no. He said, you want to learn? I said yes. And of course, but we had just kind of met. Diane, who lived in the same room with me, and I can't come up with the language either, but she was very nice. I wanted to go, I had duty, I had barracks duty, so they take your ID and they take your Liberty Book card, then I don't think they do that now, but they did then, and put it away so you don't leave the barracks. And women at NTC San Diego and North Island, I think, were not allowed to walk at night, walk out at night, and out of the barracks or wherever you were, you had to have a companion. It could be another woman, you had to have a companion. And so I knew that Bobby J was at the club, and I wanted to go to had no way to get into the club or even get out of the building. Diane lent me her ID card, was totally illegal, and her liberty card. And I walked out the door heading toward where everybody was. This big black car pulls up, and an officer rolls the window down and says, "Where are you going?" And I said, "To the club," and he said, "Get in the car." So I got in the car, and he took me back to the barracks. He says, "Get that ID card fixed tomorrow." Yes, see, first the whole time I'm just dying inside. I'm just like, I'm scared to death. And he said, "Good night." And that was the end of that. But I told Diane the next day, I said, "You have to go get this card, new card, because we'll be in trouble. We will be in trouble." So anyway, that was, anyway. Anyway, the car, wrecking the car. We did get out driving, we're driving, and Bobby J says, "How's the gas?" And I'm like, "This trying to find gas on the Mercury." And the car went right into the ditch and hit a culvert, all that stuff, pretty torn up. And so that was I wrecked my future husband's car. That's the only time I wrecked. No, it isn't. And I don't drive anymore. I promise I will never drive again. Anyway, I've had an amazing life. I mean, seriously, and I know you have too. You've had an amazing life. Yeah, you have. We have. And I'm just grateful I'm still here.
Hi. What I'm hearing that is so amazing is that you never lost your love for your country, even though you had experiences where maybe people did not respect you the same as a man in the military. And my ex-husband was a graduate of the Air Force Academy, so not me. But even at that time, they had not let women into the Air Force Academy, and he was against women coming into the Air Force Academy, and it's just such an interesting thing to hear. It doesn't sound like you guys were as mistreated as I would have thought, and you're still totally patriotic and wanted to serve your country. Did you ever have any really horrible situations that made you not want to stay with your Navy?
I'm sorry. Yeah. The reason I did not stay in the military was because I had a hearing loss and I was medically discharged. Otherwise, I would have made it a career. But
yeah, were there other opportunities, like any patriotic experience? Was there ever anything really bad that happened? That made you kind of second guess or want to get out?
There was a senior chief here in Dodger, and he was part of the medical, okay, because they don't have their own command. The base was Naval Surface Warfare Center at that time. If you look at my name tag, it has that was the Lieutenant Command, and then there was Aegis and Space Command and Space Surveillance, and SWC, okay. Anyway, so there were major commands. There wasn't a lot of all of the ones that are there now. Oh, sorry. Anyway, so my immediate command was Bethesda, the Naval Dental Clinic Command, and then he was under the medical command. But because we were physically in his building, he made his presence known many, many times. And I remember an incident where we had a commander come to me, and he said we had a female officer whose husband, they were divorced, but her husband was killed in an accident and needed dental records to verify that it was him. And so we had an attic, and I went up to the attic and I found the records that were very, very appreciative of the help. I had him sign it out and everything. And this senior chief just came up and, read me the riot act, that he was going to have me disciplined and all this kind of stuff because I released records without the wife's, but I have the wife's approval over the phone. Anyway, but he also was very demeaning to the women, not just me, but the women underneath him. And of course that can't happen anymore. But there was a lot of, even at that time, the fraternization and comments that shouldn't have been made to the women because I was single by myself. I got a lot of offhand or off-color suggestions and things like that that you had to deal with at the time. You just, you didn't complain about it.
You learn to let it go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah. Nothing ever physical, thank God. But
It's all just all vocabulary.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So passive another time.
Anyway. Thankfully, the women today don't have to deal with that. I mean, it happens, but there are avenues for them to have that taken care of.
Jeannie, before the event, you shared a story about the shirt that's part of your uniform.
Your shirt.
You want to share about that?
Oh, the uniform. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Dave. Good one.
I didn't put the white shirt with it because it's very faded and discolored. But when I came into the military, you got, and I, like Bobby, I'm very proud to have worn that uniform. And we didn't get the flack that you did at that time, wearing it. But I was proud to be in uniform. But anyway, when we were in boot camp, you got a stencil, and it had your name and your initials, and it had your social security number, and you had to put that on every piece of your uniform. And of course, if something happened and you lost that, well, there goes there's your social security number right there for everybody to see. And I didn't notice that until I pulled that out of the bag today, and I thought, oh my God, that's my social security number. And then I remembered that stencil was a brown stencil like that, and it had all your information on it, and then you had to stencil on every piece of equipment, every piece of uniform that you had.
You didn't have to be on that.
No, you didn't. Oh. And what if you lost it, then somebody has all your information?
That wouldn't go so well today.
Yeah.
Any last questions for?
But I think back then too, you didn't have to worry so much about the identity theft and all that. There was not the technology to do that readily.
One more question, is there more? Bobby? Yeah. So if you guys read her bio, she was, she served happily for 2 years in the military until she got pregnant. And I think my question for you is, if you could go back and you were allowed to remain in the military, still having children, yeah, would you have remained in the military?
I would, yes, I'd do a whole lot differently.
What would you do differently?
I'm thinking.
It's been a long time.
I'd do a whole lot different today. I would have, I would have I wouldn't have done radio school because the only place you could go to work after radio school was the phone company, I think, and telephone. That's it. I think I would do something that would be, easier to have a job later, because you can't stay forever. You might want to stay forever, but you can't stay forever. So, and I would have, I think I would have paid more attention. I would, you know, I would probably been a dental tech or whatever. Pharmacist mate, I can really count pills really good. Not a doctor, not a nurse, a pharmacist mate. Oh my God. Anyway, I would not wreck my future husband's car. And actually, my Diane that I've been talking about was my roommate. She wanted to learn to drive too, so I got up at like 4 a.m. and got ready to go sneak out at 6 a.m. to go learn to drive. And boy, was she mad when I got back. But I have not gone. Anyway, so but I wrecked his car. It was like, it was easy, actually was easy to fix. It just actually tore a front tire off. Anyway. If any of you guys wondered why your grandfather doesn't want me to drive, that's it.
I got one more question.
Yes, sir, go ahead, please.
And I'll need, like I thought last night, but since we're
And I
live.
would also learn not to. What? No.
I have a question for Bobby. When you're speaking about Normandy, you said that your son Rod and your daughter-in-law Candy were there with you. This is gonna come up later, so was anybody else with you?
Anyone else with you when you went to Normandy? Like me?
Would you like to add anything based on what you've heard, or any questions too? I mean, we're so grateful that you sat up here.
Keep me out of trouble. And she's deputy sheriff, remember that.
We've got important people on our side, right?
She was with me, yes. Anyway,
You worked for the first female,
so anyway, and I would learn them to put my hand out. And boy, trying to hand me something. No. So anyway, because that happened twice in my life, and that was really dumb.
I just, when we were speaking about a month or two ago, I think Shannon, you shared that your supervisor was the first female.
My sheriff, in Arlington was the first female sheriff in Virginia.
It's really impressive family. Well, thank you all so much, and thank everybody for coming out. We really appreciate you being here. We do have tokens of appreciation for the ladies, and please don't stand up. So it says, it's a plaque that says, Making Waves, Stories from Women Who Served, presented to Jeannie Coakley and to Roberta Locker, in recognition of your participation in our Veteran Integration Program event on October 16, 2024, NSWC Dahlgren Division is presenting you with this plaque. As a guest speaker, the memories and experiences you shared with us brought your service to life and made an indelible impression. You continue to make waves. You're making me cry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would be great if you the two
Oh,
of
there we
you
go.
would
Go
come
back
back.
there.
Yeah.
And we just have a little, we figured after this long day, we might need some sugar. So we'll get you, and Shannon and Lance as well, some Navy mugs that we filled with Halloween candy. And we liked these because they have away imagery on the mugs, so just a little extra token. Appreciate it. So thank you all so much, and thank you everybody for coming out. We really appreciate it. For supporting us.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of that.
Oh,